On the 11th of October 2009, 12 men crossed a border to play football. They had their boots, they had their kit, they had a match to get to. An ordinary Saturday in an ordinary place for men living ordinary lives. 11 of them never came home. One survived with a bullet in his neck. He walked for 3 hours through unfamiliar mountain terrain before he found another human being. This is not a story about what went wrong. It's a story about what was done, about who did it, and about why nobody has ever been made to answer for it. This is no verdict, and this is the story of Los Maniceros. The match was in La Tala, a small town in Venezuela's Táchira state just across the Colombian border. A local league game on a makeshift pitch. They were on the field. The match had either just ended or was still going, accounts vary on the exact moment, when the armed men appeared, dressed in black, moving with purpose. And they did something that has haunted every account of this story since. They asked for the list of players. Before we go any further, you need to know who these men were. These were not professional athletes. They were street vendors, young men from Colombia, from Bucaramanga, from Cúcuta, who had followed the informal economy across the border, selling peanuts and necklaces on buses to earn enough to send something home. They called themselves Los Maniceros, the peanut men. It was a joke and a truth at the same time. They had a list. Think about what that means. This was not a robbery of opportunity. This was not wrong place, wrong time. Someone had known these men would be there. Someone had written their names down. Someone had given that list to men in black clothing who arrived at a football field on a Saturday afternoon and called out the names one by one. When your name was called, you stepped forward. And then you were put into a van, all 12 of them. The Venezuelan Director of Criminal Investigations, Wilmer Flores Trocel, described it simply. They called out the players' names, lined them up, and took them to an unknown destination. That sentence should disturb you more the longer you sit with it. The clinical precision of it, the bureaucratic horror. A register, a roll call, a disappearance. The youngest of those 12 men was 17 years old. To understand what happened in those hills, you need to understand the ground those men were standing on. The Colombia-Venezuela border in 2009 was not a line on a map. It was a territory. And in territories, the people who carry weapons make the rules. The ELN, the National Liberation Army, had operated in this region for decades. Born from the idealism of the 1960s and turned into something that resembled a criminal enterprise. They taxed, they extorted, they controlled the movement of people and goods through areas that no government could police effectively. And Hugo Chávez's Venezuela gave them somewhere to breathe. This is the backdrop. Not to excuse what happened. Nothing excuses what happened. But to understand the geography of violence that 12 men with football boots and kit bags walked into without knowing it. They crossed that border because there was a match to play. That was all. Because you don't cancel the match. Because for 90 minutes on a Saturday afternoon, the peanut sellers got to be footballers, and that was worth something. It cost them everything. Here is what we know about what came next, because one man survived to tell it. His name was Manuel Cortez. He was 19 years old. For 2 weeks, the 12 men were held in a camp in the mountains, chained together in pairs, outdoors, in the sun, fed enough to stay alive and nothing more. 2 weeks is a long time to be afraid. Cortez later said they had been told they would be freed, that the ordeal was almost over, that they just had to wait a little longer. And in the psychology of captivity, you hold on to that. You have to hold on to it. Because the alternative, the thing that sits at the edge of every waking thought in a place like that, is too large to look at directly. On the 24th of October, they were told to move. They were taken from the mountain, and somewhere in the hills of Táchira state, the men in black stopped walking. Manuel Cortez was shot once, through the neck. He fell. He did not move. For hours he lay still among the bodies of his teammates, his friends, the men he had sold peanuts with and played football with and crossed a border with, and he did not move. And then, when there was silence, he got up. He walked for 3 hours through unfamiliar terrain before he found a farmer. He was alive. He was the only one. Here is where this story should have ended. With an investigation, with arrests, with a courtroom, with someone standing up and explaining why they wrote those names down. That is not what happened. What happened instead was the politics. Colombia blamed the ELN, the National Liberation Army, operating with impunity on Venezuelan soil. Manuel Cortés himself named them, said the team had been lured into the group's territory by its leader. Venezuela, under Hugo Chavez, responded differently. The vice president stood up and suggested, with a straight face, that the victims might have been paramilitaries, that the dead, the 17-year-old, the peanut sellers, the men chained to trees for 2 weeks, might have been the bad guys. That is the moment you understand what this really is. Not a crime investigation, a diplomatic maneuver. The bodies hadn't even been returned yet. The motive, the actual reason these specific men were targeted, why their names were on that list, has never been definitively established. There is no trial, no sentence. No one who ever had to stand up in a courtroom and explain the list. A man was arrested at the hospital trying to see Manuel Cortés. He was placed under guard at a military facility. Security was increased around the sole survivor. Because whoever had ordered this, whoever had made the list, presumably knew that one man had walked away. And the questions remain. They always remain. The sandy patch of ground in Chiruru where they were found still exists. After it happened, neighbors said they were away or refused to comment. People are scared, one man said. They won't talk about what happened here. That phrase stays with me, because in one sense it's about fear, the very real, rational fear of a border community that understood exactly who had done this. But in another sense, it describes something that happens everywhere, after every story like this. We stop talking about it. The seasons turn. Other things happen. 11 men executed in the hills of Táchira become a Wikipedia entry, a footnote, a cold statistic. They were peanut sellers. They were footballers. They were somebody's sons and brothers and teammates. And somewhere, in a camp, in a city, in a comfortable house with no connection to a dusty mountain, the person who wrote those names down has never been held to account. That is the verdict. There isn't one. Los Maniceros deserved better than this. Their names deserved more than silence. This has been No Verdict. Justice wasn't served, but it isn't forgotten. If this story deserves to be told, subscribe for more cases.